everyone. Thank you again for being here. This is the kickoff of Art Academy's Karina Meal Fellowship Residency. And I'm going to make some introductions. First of all, my name is Lene Garten. I'm the director of the Office of Engagement at the Art Academy. I'll be doing my best to kind of moderate tonight, but it's really all about the artists and the partnership. So thanks again for being here. I'm just going to make some quick introductions. We got a hybrid situation happening here, obviously. Super excited to have everybody here to talk about this amazing partnership. So first, I'm going to introduce Joe Jarondala, artist and nonprofit arts administrator, is the 18th president of the Art Academy of Cincinnati. He received his BA in visual arts sculpture from Hamburger University after apprenticing in stone carving in Florence, Italy. He received his MFA in sculpture from the University of Georgia. Prior to taking a leadership role at the Art Academy, Jarondala was the associate dean of graduate studies at DAP at the University of Cincinnati. Jarondala also serves as an advisor to Source Studio. I'm going to cut these a little short so you can get to the point here. Next, I'd like to introduce Mel Chin on the screen. I think it's in presentation mode here, but Mel is the founder of Source Studio from Houston, Texas. He is known for the broad range of approaches in his art, including works that require multidisciplinary collaborative teamwork and works that conjoin cross-cultural aesthetics and complex ideas. A current project of Mel's is Fundred that focuses on national awareness and prevention of childhood lead poisoning and art making. Mel is also a 2019 MacArthur Fellowship recipient. Next, Amanda Wiles is an artist and the director of Source Studio. Prior to her role as a director, a prior role, was the director of the Funded Project and special projects manager with Mel Chin Studio. Balancing creativity and pragmatism, Wiles works with artists and organizations that value artistic processes, experimentation, collaboration, and connection. Wiles currently serves on the Black Mountain College Museum and Art Center in Asheville, North Carolina. She holds a master's degree in studio art from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and received her undergrad in fine art from Wayne State in Detroit. Muse Dodd is a anti-disciplinary artist, curator, and DJ from Maryland, based in New Orleans. Their work centers around questions. How do you remember what you do? What do you choose to forget? Thank you. Through the act of remembering, Muse uses their body to map the lived experience of Africans in America. Muse channels trauma to connect with process and alchemize pain through personal and collective, through movement, ritual, and collective dreaming. Last is Jackie Summel. Their work explores interdependence of social sculpture, mindfulness practices, humanness, and prison abolition. She spent the last 2 decades working directly with incarcerated folks, most notably her elders Herman Wallace and Albert Woodfox. Her work has been exhibited extensively throughout the US and Europe. She is a recipient of multiple residencies and fellowships, including but not limited to a Blade of Grass Fellowship, MSU's Critical Race Studies Fellowship, the Robert Rauschenberg Artist and Activist Fellowship, etc., etc. Yes, so I'm going to end there. Introduction's done. Hopefully now you can hear from everybody else. So, as we started, the theme for tonight really is around what does it mean to engage with our art, with each other, and I'm really excited to hear from this group. And like I mentioned in my intro, this is the Art Academy's Karina Meal Fellowship Residency. So I'd love to hand it over to Joe and Mel and the team online to kind of talk about the history of this program and how we got to be together today. Okay.
Sounds perfect. Thank you, Lene. I'll just briefly go into a couple thank yous before we get into the conversation. A special thank you, of course, to Ron and Larry Meal, Karina's parents, the Dennis Meal and 4M Investments Council, LLC, Well Foundation for their incredible support, and most emphatically, Source Studio. You may say, what is Source? I'll just briefly say what Source is, and then Amanda will go into Source Studio. But first, it all starts with this dude, Elvis, as my mentor at the University of Georgia. And if you really dive into this photo, you can see a counterfeit drawing being done up here in the corner. You can see a wine bottle down the corner, and you can see some rubber cement, which I'm not sure kept him awake many nights in Georgia. But what we're here to do is celebrate and honor not only Karina Meal, an amazing artist, and I'll just go into a couple of things. Karina Meal was a dancer, a singer, an artist, a mentor, a thinker, a player, a wide-eyed dreamer, a laugher, a crier, strong-willed, stubborn, empathetic, and fierce, a thinker and a tinkerer. And most of all, just like every one of us, trying to make the earth a better place to be on. There's no time to rest. There's no time to pause. There's no time not to create. This is the time, as never before, to make each and every day a brighter day. Even though my mentor, Mel, often says every day is a holiday for someone else, what that means is together we can move mountains and make a difference in the lives through all that we do through engagement. To the individuals here today, I just ask to take a little moment of silence to honor those who are not here with us. Not only Karina, but those who have lost their lives in the past months, years, decades. As we approach the 5th year anniversary of Karina being taken from us, just a brief moment of silence. Thank you all, and we do recognize the historic discrimination and violence inflicted on indigenous peoples in Ohio, on this land that we sit right now, including their forced removal from these ancestral lands, and the deliberate and systematic destruction of their communities and culture. We have not seen anything over these past couple years and decades and centuries. It's how we must all acknowledge to be better and do our part to combat hate against all individuals. We've seen the rise of Asian hate. We've seen the rise of hate against African Americans, against all cultures. In this community, especially Art Academy of Cincinnati, makes a commitment with this kind of residency and fellowship to honor those as we contribute to be better. So thank you all.
Thank you, Joe. I want to add a little note about Karina. I wore this suit in LA way back when it was 100 degrees. And we were doing a sing-along, so I needed to dress up. And Karina was putting it together. I want to say as in the evening and the day where she had helped pull the stakes that were driven in the ground so hard that the crew of 3 men couldn't do it all. But she did it. I mean, there's another thing about Karina was this idea of strength. I'd never met a stronger person because in that hellish atmosphere, she committed to an idea that we were reaching out to the whole community of Los Angeles, and she wanted to make sure it got done. But her strength was incredible. I've never met a stronger person, really. And I could barely pull one of them out. I think she may have pulled 1,000 pounds of them, 700 of them out of the ground. And because when the guys couldn't do it anymore. But I also think her strength and all the qualities you mentioned gave me hope. The idea of hope. The principle of hope is because it's about something beyond me that would be so important for all our lives. So when she was taken, I know that Amanda had suggested this award, and having Muse and Jackie and the future. You are reason why she lives within me. You personify the hope that is necessary. So I am just eternally grateful for what has had transpired and this opportunity to talk about what we do to maintain something of that strength. And we have to have strength while we present hope for ourselves and others. And because it's dramatic now as it was then, but we see it even more clearly. So I thank you. This is an opportunity for me to thank everyone involved with this enterprise, especially you know, Cincinnati. Joe, you know, we're all good friends, but we're friends that do things and commit to things. So I am better because of all of you and more hopeful than I have ever been when I see people like you and interact with you. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll add a bit too. You know, we worked with Karina in Cincinnati actually 6 years ago, I believe, or 20 back in 2015, whatever you were now. But you know, it's really, I think Source was founded, of course, about 5 years ago, and it's you know, Mel's a founder, and we're all co-founders of Source, because it's really a collaborative studio, and I think that's something that, you know, the relationship that we had with Karina and that we have with Karina as a collaborator, as a thought partner, as a maker and a doer and a thinker, that's a relationship and a way of centering, you know, artists and collaboration that we try to bring into all of our projects. And that's really, you know, that spirit that we want to bring into the fellowship. And so, you know, our fellowship is unique in that it's, you know, unrestricted award to artists. So there's no deliverables. You don't have to write a report. And really it's set out to honor other artists. And we chose specifically to award funds to women, trans, and non-binary, looking again. And it's something that Karina and I had many discussions about, the systematic, you know, exclusion of certain peoples. And even more so with this next round of fellows, we were more intentional to invite all POC Indigenous folks to nominate artists in our next round that we'll be announcing very soon. You know, so we're really, you know, intentionally trying to counter the systemic disadvantages too. So, but that said, the spirit of the fellowship is really about camaraderie and connection. And so honored to have had the relationship with Muse and Jackie over the last couple of years. And with all of you. And I think that the kind of, you know, the conversations and the friendship, I think really at the kind of at the center of what this is. And Joe is, you know, it's all part of the network. And I think that's really, you know, how we're thinking about this. So glad to be here with you all. And hold Karina's spirit in this always.
I'd love to give the artists an opportunity to talk about their work, their practice. Muse and Jackie are both 2020 inaugural recipients of this fellowship. So what have you been up to, Muse, since receiving the award? Yeah. What are you working on here? So I just want to say again and again, we're so happy that you're here.
I'm so honored to be here and honored to be like chosen to continue, like, not necessarily continue Karina's legacy, but to be in conversation with her. And, you know, it feels very like special, you know, and I can see like so many people that she's touched, and she's like, her legacy is able to like impact me in my life as well. So I guess, yeah, we started, kind of like was selected as one of the like inaugural fellows like 2019. So this has just like been a gift that keeps giving. So like now I'm here in Cincinnati, and you know, like being able to travel and to connect with so many different types of people has been an honor. And like working with you, Amanda, working with you, Mel, like it has really changed my life. But yeah, so like the last 2 years, you know, has been a very like interesting time to be an artist. But I really kind of committed to focusing on like not only like my mental health, but also like my spiritual health, and also like creating like stronger boundaries of like how I let people access me and my art, and having support like from Source of being able to say no to things that are not necessarily aligned with my values, and like really coming back to that core of like, why did I become an artist? And like, as someone who is you know, working artist, struggling artist sometimes, not struggling, but, you know, like someone who's trying to support myself and my family and my community, like this, like source, like this has been a good source of support. But yeah, so like the last 2 years, I've moved a lot. I moved to New Orleans, and I've also been creating work with my community, you know, like a lot of like shifting to stuff online. So like I'm also a curator, I DJ, you know, doing the virtual thing. And really also part of me moving to New Orleans, like my family's from New Orleans. So like reconnecting with my ancestors, a lot of my work deals with like connecting like deep bridges. So even thinking of like how we're calling people into the space. So y'all, I don't know if y'all can see it, but on the left wall, I have a tapestry that has the names of some of my ancestors who have gone on, so like bringing them into the space. Because I feel like there's not that much separation between us and, you know, the people who are like allowing you to be in this space. So I've been in deep, like, you know, deep study, deep conversation over these last years, and just seeing, because I feel like there was a point where it's like something has to give. Like, you know, I feel like I can't kill myself to make art, you know, and I have to find a way to, you know, because I feel like for me it's a calling, it's a spiritual calling as well, and I'm like, it shouldn't be something that is harmful to me. So like I've kind of like restructured how I look at my art, but it's also like, you know, like we're sharing energy, like everyone in this space, y'all online, you know, we're sharing this space, and I think that is so special and so spiritual. So I think for me, like the core of like who I am, and not only as an artist, but core of just how I am as a person, is to bring people together, bring things into conversation, and just like open those floodgates of everything. I'm also feeling like emotional now, because I'm like, I feel how much y'all love Karina and everything. So I'm just grateful to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Well, we was the conduit, and we'll talk more about that, but we have many of individuals who are affected by her work. She walked these steps. She was in this room when it was not as nice. For sure, it was a big storage space, and she collected things from this space. And she worked right outside these steps as a mentor and as a faculty member here. So thanks to our Dean, Paige Williams, and the whole crew and faculty here for inviting her to part of that community. But also we have one of our roommates here, Kate Teepee, who's here. And, so the stories go on, but that's the story of artists. That's the story of how we exist, is that collaborative community engagement. And we're so fortunate to have Lene here as our director of the Office of Engagement, because what are we as artists if we don't engage? So I think that's the start of the conversation.
Yeah, and also Jackie. Yeah, we gotta get Jackie
Yes.
talking about her work. Come on, Jackie.
We're
Tell
ready.
us what you've been up to.
Is it a requirement if you're a Soros fellow that you have to move to New Orleans?
No, that was by chance. That was by chance, actually. No, I've been in the city. I started visiting New Orleans in 2001, almost 2002, and then kind of moved here officially shortly after Katrina, a week after Katrina. So what was the question? What is my work? What have I been doing?
Yes.
Yeah. Just
Why
just
am
talk
I
about
grateful? All those things? Okay.
all the things.
Well, I'm very grateful to be here. It goes without saying. I'm delighted, honestly, to reconnect with Muse, and honored that you included me in this conversation. Amanda and Mel also, obviously. And, you know, for me, you know, I feel called to share a little bit about my application to this fellowship, and maybe some of the ways that it embodies some of the energy that you describe Karina having, because I just went for it. It was an anonymous nomination, and I was more candid, less grammatical, more free-spirited with what I sent y'all than any other fellowship. And I feel so honored that you trusted me to be part of this inaugural year.
You know, the last 2 years for the whole world have been tumultuous and often terrible. And, you know, for me, much as Muse described, a lot of it has been a reorientation and a transmutation of trauma and challenge. And I think that is the greatest gift of the artist. And sometimes that manifested in perceivable work, which we can talk about. But I think the most beautiful thing, the most magical thing that has come out of it is the possibility for joy in spite of. And that is very much in the ways that we have stayed connected, or the way that we were Josin at the beginning of this conversation, you know, and those moments of pleasure, which for me are very much, you know, like the trophies of the last 2 years. And so, you know, as much as, you know, my artwork manifests in the relatively obnoxious bio that I send out, you know, it also really, it is the ability to transmute those challenges into these moments of joy and laughter and goofy and love. And so, yeah, thank you for bringing that into the space. Yeah.
All right, so I prepared some questions, obviously as part of my job, conversation starters. So my first is really anyone open, in the spirit of talking about engagement, social practice. Tell us about your entrance into art making, and what do you think the linkage is between engagement and inspiration?
Is it me? All right, it's open. Yeah, I guess I've always like, that's just the way that I relate to the world of like art making. So I started as a kid, you know, like I grew up in the church, so I'm singing in the choir, I'm dancing, and then I came into like more like visual work when I was in school. I was in theater, I was an actor, you know. And then when I got to Howard, I was studying film, and just like basically for me though, it was just about storytelling, because I've always been like really interested in like folklore, history, and like getting to the depth of. I was telling you and Lene like about like I was always the kid that asked why is that, or like what happened before. So like I think I use my art as a tool to understand why things are the way they are, and then also going beyond that, I think now I'm at a point of like what needs to change, and then also like how can I use like I feel like art for me is a like spiritual like practice, and it's a modality of healing for me. So I can use, if I can feel distant by making art, and also I'm impacting other people, that really just makes it so fulfilling. It makes it feel like, okay, I have an impact on the world. So like I'm able to bring people into conversation. I guess I would say my first solo show, and the film that's showing in the back is called Remnants. And it was me tracing kind of my lineage of my family, being a descendant of like the transatlantic slave trade. I could only go back in my like lineage. So I was like on this journey to be like, how do I connect the dots, or how do I fill in those dots? And along the way, it was me doing a lot of like research into like my family history, talking to my grandmas, tell me about your family, like what was it like growing up? And then that allowed me to create a space. So I had people come into the gallery, and my grandma's from New Orleans, so like my grandma made gumbo, and we had like a kind of like a soup night and story night, and I had invited people in to like talk about like what does legacy mean to you? Like what is something that you like cherish from your childhood now? So I feel like if I can be a conduit for people to like really like engage and question these things, like I'm always like just like I want to like take what is accepted and like always question that. So for me, it's just like always trying to find the answers, and that leads to more questions. So that's kind of like how I started and continue to like lead my work, and that's why I say I'm an anti-disciplinary artist, because yeah, I don't know if I'm disciplined, but I just go where spirit leads me. Like spirit leads me to if I be taking photos, if that is me cooking, if that's me DJing, like I just follow what makes the most sense for the work. But yeah, I mean, and there's so many ways that I feel like we can awaken the inner artist in us as well. And I don't think it should be something that's like closed off for anybody, because I think that's a gift that we all have, whatever form that manifests. And if people are like, oh, I see them doing that. There's someone like that looks like me who's like in a gallery. This is someone, I feel like if I could be that person, then there's going to be a floodgate of more people like me who are sharing their stories, So I never want, I never want to speak for anybody else. I just want to, this is the way that I see the world. And like, how do you see the world? So like opening up that conversation. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's go to Jackie.
Yeah.
Like, how do you engage? Like, what is your origin to become a practitioner of engagement?
I think like Muse, I always really was, a questioner, and I grew up in this super weird environment on Long Island, and my dad was from Brooklyn, and whatever's going on with him, he kind of like always tells the same stories over and over and over again, and they always have the same punchline somehow, and one of them, which really resonates, is I'll do it in his accent. He would say, you gotta question everything you hear and half of what you see. That's number one. Number two is you never trust authority, and so that was like very formative for me, just like hearing that play throughout my head. And I ended up being that kid that was, the first girl to play football in the colonized United States, the kind of like shit stirrer, for lack of a better term, or maybe that's the best term. And the idea of making collided with my experience being a jock most of my life, very accidentally. And there's no like one thing that happened, but I was like the weird jock that was doodling or drawing or like shifting my uniform or, whatever that creative action was. And then my politics of my contrarian identity just really became, the only way I could find to express it was through creative practices. It was like I really, at a certain point in my early 20s, had exhausted the number of times I could send out a petition or show up in a protest or, throw rocks through a window. And suddenly I realized that you could be creative and actually get more people interested, more people questioning with you, more people curious about why you think that way or why you live that way. And I think the first project that really came through, which is amazing that we're talking about it today, was the No Bush project. The first time I realized that my politics could collide with the creative practice was when I asked 478 women to shave their bush and send it to me in protest of Bush's reinstatement of the Mexico City ban, right? So these policies that would ultimately eradicate Roe v. Wade without needing the Supreme Court. So today, on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, with all of the challenges that we have in front of us in the coming weeks, I do think it's amazing to be talking about this. But I was dating someone who was a pretty successful artist at the time, and I just kind of fell into this idea and was like, let's do it. And the next thing you know, I have like 478 bags of pubic hair, which was like one more than the number of votes that would have elected Gore, and that I just had all this pubic hair in my little teeny tiny apartment. And I was like, shit, what did I get myself into? And then I realized that people started paying attention, like, who is this weirdo collecting all this pubic hair and why? And then I could conversate with folks about, the issues that were most meaningful to me without screaming at them. And so I realized this was a superpower, and, and that, and to whom much is given, much is expected, and to use it wisely. Yeah.
Yeah. That's some of you. Your father's voice resonates with me. Don't trust anybody. But that's the origins of making art, is when you begin to trust yourself, you see, and trust enough to go beyond and just do something. And that's a hard place to get to. So if it takes a bunch of bags of pubic hair, so be it. But that's one thing. But then when we're talking about engagement, you think that for that, to share that, I think now these days you have to create the climate of trust before you can engage. You got to do something to earn that with other people when you extend beyond yourself. You see, it's like always I talk about, we got to do something before, so that the people you want to engage, so you can have a chance at engagement. So do something that sometimes you got to do something outside of what you want to do in order to get the trust enough to have that conversation, you see? So, so it's, these words are meaningful. Daddy was right in several ways, but I think you certainly have gone beyond maybe his one story. But I think in all of that, and in trusting, that even with this award, always trusting that something great would come from this, from you and Muse. So it's all goodness, it's the dealio. So.
Well, Muse, you mentioned always being an artist, like from the get-go, and I can relate to that on so many levels. Growing up as a kid, just being weird. My story kind of mirrors both yours and what Jackie mentioned. Also grew up as an athlete, but like had this goal to do something different and was always different in some way. And so I'm curious for anybody, but kind of tell us about how you played as a child and how does that show up in your life today?
I don't know, Jackie, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I think we got to alley-oop who answers, because it just is a little awkward on the Zoom. So I could try. So I was just a jock as a kid and a little bit of a bully, which I'm not proud of. There was a lot of undoing, but I grew up in a pretty violent household where it was, the meanest one won. And play for me was always competitive.
Siblings.
What's
no
that?
siblings? Did you have siblings or no siblings?
Two siblings, 2 brothers. But who cares? I mean, I'm just kidding. Yeah. 2 siblings who also, can you imagine being the little brothers of the girl who played football, And so it was definitely, that kind of play was organized around competition. And I feel like I've spent most of my conscious adult life undoing that. And part of, I hope, the spirit of generosity, Herman Wallace, my elder, was a huge catalyst for that. The generosity of spirit of not working competitively, but working collaboratively has been tremendous in healing, not only in art practice, but life practice. Yeah. And that is not a cherished condition of the, commercial art world at all, and so in a lot of ways, I still feel a little rogue in my belief that we can love each other all the way through, start to finish. So yeah, okay, I'll alley-oop. Back to you, Muse.
Hey, word. Thank you. I was not a jock. I played basketball for a season. I jammed my finger a lot. I was definitely in the arts, I have an older sister who's 5 years older than me. And
so why? You were drawing? Why?
No, I wasn't drawing.
What were you doing?
I was making up dances,
Dance.
I was making up dances with my best friend, you know, Cheetah Girls is the thing. So we had the choreography down. I was also ahead in the books, like I was like, I guess it's like a form of escapism, but like, oh yeah, me still on like the fairy tale, you know, Harry Potter, all of that, like this like fantasy, magic, spent a lot of time in the library. I was like a latchkey kid, so I would be like, but I would always like lose my key because I didn't want to be home by myself. And then I would be like, my best friend like was around the corner from me, so I'd be like, oh, I lost my key. So then, but because I wasn't allowed to watch TV growing up, so my family are very like religious, so I didn't grow up watching TV. Could only listen to gospel music. So when I got to like my best friend Raven's house, it was like, I get to watch TV and you have a trampoline and you got the good snacks. Like that's where I kind of, but yeah, so it's like me, my sister, my cousins, we were always like creating something, coming up with skits. We had the video camera. We would interview each other. We would make up stories. So it was like, I was always like a media maker from jump. But it was just, yeah, it was all about play. I was not an outdoorsy kid. I have allergies and asthma and stuff like that. So like I would, like, you know, I would like have to go sit on the but yeah, so like I was definitely just like head in the books and playing with my friends, but also like I like my books and my TV. So yeah, which is also interesting now because like, I don't read as much as I used to, but I'm like, we consume media in so many different ways now, but yeah, I guess that was my play, you know. Mm-hmm. What about you, Joe? Yeah.
Me, I'll go briefly. So I was always taking apart things. I grew up in Baltimore. I was taking apart everything to my parents' dismay. My father would say to me, if you don't put that back together, you'd think he would say, you're going to get in trouble. He would say, we don't go to the horse track. So it says a lot about my father, who was an excommunicated Catholic priest. It says a lot about my father. But I wanted to go to the horse track with him. Okay, so I put things back together. So I learned about things using my hands, taking things apart, from cars to washing machines, to the, you know, Cuisinart, to everything my mother had, to her dismay. And she would say, you're never putting that thing back together. But I learned from an early age how to put things back together and how to understand how things went together. And I was always interested in that kind of avenue. I also, with that, when I eventually got to graduate school, and this guy in the upper right corner here said to me, what are you doing stone carving? Like, and he told me a story that I want him to go into about his childhood, about in the meat store and the presidents, because that story has always affected my mind, because I'm like, anything's material. And when I told Mel I was a stone carver, he said to me, like I often say, why are you carving stone? Like, you got all these ideas. Why would you use that medium if the medium means nothing to the context, just about carving stone? So, and he told me this story like one of the first days I met him. So Mel, tell us about growing up.
Well, you know, we didn't play that much. My brothers were, I was terrible at sports, extremely nerdy and extremely shy. But we had to work in my parents' store. It was in the middle of a African-American Chicano neighborhood. We only understood what white people might look like on television. So we were isolated from a lot of things. But I decided to work in the butcher market, which had the classic routine where you could get the bologna and the chicken by hand, you weigh it. And I was a little bit lazy because all the butcher paper, I instead of serving the customers, I would ask, do you mind if I draw you a sketch of you? And I said, no, we just want that pound of bologna. And, they call my father Mr. Benny. Mr. Benny, please tell your son to please just wait on us, And so they put me into other details like grinding hamburger meat. And so I was grinding this hamburger meat and I started thinking about this. I wanted to learn how to do sculpture. And I started thinking about the presidential series. And then I don't know the date because it was after Kennedy was shot, And so I did a portrait of Kennedy and hamburger meat. And this is important to learn as an artist, that content and context matters. Because I didn't want it to be touched, actually, because I thought, a perfect picture of John F. Kennedy to honor him. And a customer came in and wanted to say, I want a pound of, and they looked and they freaked out because my father had to come and dress me. And I said, no more presidential portraits in hamburger meat. So I was cut because it's like, I don't care what you think or how you want to make your art, but you can't be scaring the customers like that because the idea of scooping, it's pretty awful, really. So that got me to think about, it's okay to make things, but you better damn well think about the context of what you're doing, So yeah, I had an important lesson that yes, anything can be material, but you have to know that it has a history and be careful about how you use hamburger meat. That's what I told Joe. Just be careful about the material. See, by the way, Joe, I just finished the stone carving, just to let you know. I got you off the track so I could come in and do the thing, So I am so like, damn, I'm slick. Sorry to say.
Practice. So let's practice.
Love it.
Amanda, you haven't shared.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us, Amanda.
Yeah, so I would say, how did I play as a kid? I think I did win one soccer trophy when I was in kindergarten. That was probably the last sport I played ever. But I was totally the artist. I was in the house that really we didn't talk to each other in my family. And so I would just go to my room and either the TV was on in the living room or I would go to my room and I would just work on crafts. So I basically spent most of my childhood and teen years in my room working on drawing and crafting and all kinds of materials. And then also I would spend the summers in Southern Ohio. So I would do a lot of wandering in the fields and with farm animals. So I would think that actually like art and kind of arts and creative practice was my kind of way of connecting with myself and actually like feeling. And it wasn't, and then it was really about understanding, right? So like, actually, I think, I'm a very experiential learner. Like I don't really know something until I see it and experience it. So I think, growing up and like eventually getting into school and in college, really starting to actually study art. I never went to an art museum until I was in college. It was when I started to see that you could actually like really understand the world and history with much more complexity through the medium of art and start to tell stories and understand things in that way. So I think art, initially for me, it was like this way of connecting with myself, but then it was a way of understanding. And, I've been an artist, I've been a maker of things. And I think where I got really kind of bogged down when I was in school was like this weird pursuit of originality that art schools insist that you have, and you can't do anything if someone else has done something like it. It has to be very different. And it was just this singular artist genius thing really never made sense to me. But when I started to learn about artists that were working, collaboratively and on bigger issues, like that sold me again. So the art has been a lifeline out of and into ways of understanding and relating. So I think that really kind of ties directly into why I started working with Mel. I was drawn to work with him through these collaborative environmental projects, and then the way that I try to take some of the ways in which I've learned from him working in this way, and art making as a way of connecting with one another, and either artists together or people who don't consider themselves artists. And I think Jackie was really kind of alluding to that, the kind of the connections you can have with people through a creative practice, and through it's a little bit removed from the politics or the binaries. So to get people actually like involved in creative practice together, I mean, that's what compels me every day. And that's what compels me, I think, you know, through like working with you all and the artists. It's like, I you know, just, yeah, it's just, I think there's, to bring out the creative aspect of anyone through any kind of making and interaction, like that's the engagement that's compelling for me.
Amanda, you kind of tee into my next question, because I always think about, as much as social practice and creative engagement is and should be about people, I'm always thinking about places too. And so I'd love for you all to tell us about a place that makes you feel good, and like, how do you view relationships between people and places in your practices, and social practice in general, and what you bring to organizations?
Yeah, I can go. I guess, I mean, there's a lot of places that like I feel good. But what the place that kind of like jumps to the front of my mind would be like Salvador, Brazil. So a lot of like the posters that you've been seeing around with my friend Averchi, with on like wearing the white and on the black rocks, that was taken in Salvador, Bahia. And I first went when I was an undergrad at Howard and fell in love. So Bahia has the largest population of like African people outside of like Nigeria. So I was just like, I wanna travel, you know, like school will pay for me to travel. And, you know, I didn't speak any Portuguese. So I moved, this is like back in 2014, 2015. I moved there and was in this program learning Portuguese. And then I connected, like, I feel like also for me, like being in Brazil was like also kind of like my queer awakening. So like I started making these connections with other like Black, queer, and trans people, and like just being able to like tap into a larger community, and then also like a very like Black community that was like beautiful to be exposed to different cultures, because even in a different like city, like we all come from the same place. So like being able to see like the connection, making the connection between like, oh, like I'm eating like this really good like seafood dish called moqueca, and it's like you can get it with shrimp, and it's like it's made with palm oil, and like tasting these flavors and then being like, oh, that kind of tastes like etouffee, like my grandma makes. So like making those connections of like we're not even that far apart, and like being able to also like something about warm weather, like like it feels great. And so I went there, I stayed there for 6 months. I learned a little bit of Portuguese, made some friends. And when I graduated from Howard in 2016, I was like, I don't know what to do with my life, but I got some time, so I'm gonna go back to Salvador. And I hit up my friend Evergy, and I was like, I have this idea, because this is like in the wake of, you know, verdicts of like not guilty verdicts coming about like Trayvon Martin, you know, and I was just like, I feel so heavy. And I was like, I am tired of having to look on Facebook, on Instagram. This is before I had like Instagram like that, but you know, like constantly being bombarded with these images of Black people being murdered. So it's like, how can I create a space for like Black people to disengage, you know? So I was like, I want to create a place for visually for like Black people to be at rest. So we collaborated on this project, and I had no idea it would be this big, you know, like I was just like, I'm taking photos because I feel like I have something to say, and it's something that I feel very deeply, and I'm not the only one that feels it, and I feel like being able to use like my art, my camera, my pen, like my voice to connect, because I think we can feel so isolated that art can bring us together and bring us into conversation. So like Salvador for me has been our second home and place of nurturing, of just like deep spiritual growth. I'm also going back next month, so I'm very excited. So that's like my top tier place that I feel really good. Yeah. Who's next?
Space for me, it's always been one place, where I was when I was 13, and then when I was 16, and then when I was 19. And when I was 21 to 25, it's a little town square above Florence, Settignano. There's a spot in the center of the square that's perfect acoustically, which I always knew that as little kids, you would scream in that spot. And it would echo around the square. So it's a spot that's, I haven't been in many, many years, decades even. So, you know, but it's a spot. It's a spot. And it's a reverberation of your voice and other people's voices stand in that spot. And that gets to the core of your soul in terms of the sound of your own voice echoing, reverberating, much like in this room.
You know, it's, I can't even think, that's why I'm quiet. I can't think of a place. So it's not a place. It is moments where and Jackie, you kind of said, where I can find a little joy. I'm kind of a dark brooding kind of person, really, and in my mind. And over the years, I crave for those moments where I can just laugh and have a little joy. And the only way I can find it is amongst friends and people. It could be amongst strangers. So it's not even a place, it's a condition that I crave. And I will always try to set the right situation for that, you know? So I think it's about moments that we really need to keep on going. So that's how I think about it. And I'm lucky I see a bunch of all you. I have found those moments. So this is very comfortable, you know? So it's great. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, sometimes it's about creating the place with all of that. It doesn't have to exist. Yeah, that's awesome.
Amanda, do you have a place, special place?
Yeah, no, I'm totally resonating with what Mel's saying about, you know, just it's the conditions and the people, but in the honor and spirit of the question, and it's a place I was actually at today. So there's not one place, but for me, always going to a large body of water, especially the ocean. And it kind of gets to all of the things that, you know, just the way in which, right, is what we know there's all kinds of science, right, behind this, the ions and the sound and the calming. And actually one thing that I really love is the sound overtaking anything. So I feel like I can say whatever I want and it's taken out to the other side of the world. You know, just the quality of sound and space is so different. And just, you know, it's instantly like neutralizing and calming and peaceful. And you know, it's you're at the face of, you know, I'm out here at the Pacific Ocean, a body of water I try to get into as much as possible, even through the winter. And you know, I appreciate the moments when I'm told that you've hit your limit, get out of the water, or you're getting pulled in. There's always a moment. And, you know, to be kind of in the face of the power of the force of nature and our earth, and just kind of, you know, that's very humbling, in addition to all the benefits. So that's my place. How about you, Jackie?
Yeah, I feel very drawn to water too, but I think I also just want to say that these questions are so lovely. Yeah, it's really so nice to have to use a different part of my brain in a you know, public facing artist conversation. So thank you. I think some kind of the collision of all these thoughts, the place where I feel the most joy and the most connection to, like, where I feel the most downloads is when it's quiet. And that is different in different situations, but it's something I seek. You know, a lot of my time is spent when I'm not grinding, just in the woods, just walking, or I will sit underwater for as long as I can just to experience that kind of silence. And I think, you know, my life is really organized in many ways around chaos, especially in relationship to incarcerated folks. And disappointment and all of that kind of hardship and heaviness, and it is on more often than anything. And so to seek silence, I think is where I really what I need more of, and it's my favorite place. Yeah.
All right, I just have one more question about your favorites. This is my favorite question to ask when I'm doing interviews or these types of things. Please tell us your favorite thing about yourself. I think this is a really important question, generally, but also for, we're in an academic institution for students to hear about what do artists like about themselves? What do people like about themselves, to kind of channel that for them. So what's your favorite thing about yourself, and how does that influence your practice?
I think we need to start with Mel.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I don't know. I'm laughing out of nervousness. You know what I love? I kind of weird as I'm a weirdo. My stupidity. That's my favorite thing, because you don't want to. I know this is being recorded. Hey, you out there, don't take any more notes. Stop that. Stop that right now. It's a self-admission of what you don't know. You see, and why I turn it around in my head is it gives me the other part. The twist is it gives me a place to discover. That's why I like that. I've always been a notch more insecure than most, even in my own mind. And so therefore it makes you always like, you're not good enough or whatever. It's not that, I know that, but it's like what I don't know really stimulates me, because unfortunately, as I'm getting a little older, it's happening more and more. So, oh God, dang. So, but yeah, it is, that's an admission. It's not, maybe that's not the right word, but what I don't know really is a stimulating part that I'm glad that I'm not born with that gene that says I know it all, I'm so sure, because it has given me so much liberation to discover. And I really love that part, the other part, the flip side of it. So strike this from the recording, because if it gets back to those MacArthur people, they gave me that award, they're going to just take it away from me. So they said, you mean God, we gave you that and you talking this crap? Yeah, just, okay, I'll let it go.
I'll jump in. There's so many things there's so many things I love about myself. But I think the thing that keeps kind of coming up is my resilience, or my ability to bounce back, or my ability to start over. And not just because I've done something in the past doesn't mean I have to do it again. Learn from my mistakes, but also being able to self-adjust, self-correct, and being able to re-steer my sail or ship if something needs to be adjusted. Because I'm not a type of person that will continue to do something that's uncomfortable or that's harmful. Yes, things are going to be hard, but I want to move in alignment with who I am. So if that means I have to go back to ground zero, I have to, be a beginner, even thinking about what you're saying, Mel, of what I don't know, and being able to be a student. I'm always open and curious about learning new things. So I love that about myself. And I think, there's so many times that I wanted to be I'm going on the art thing, maybe I should get a regular job. But I also know that I don't want to break the job. So I was I gotta figure this out, I'm not going to be upset that something is not working for me. I'm just going to figure out how to make it work. So I love that about myself. And I also love my laugh. So yeah.
Next, anyone else? I will say, for me, it's lack of vision in terms of, we talked about this today, without my glasses, I don't know who's in the room. but it's understanding from different perspectives of putting yourself in other people's shoes. When they did this eye test on me when I was freshman in high school, we talked about this today at lunch. I could not believe it, that these things could make me see differently, because I never knew differently. And it's made me understand from a young age how to understand that there's many different challenges that everyone has that you have no idea about. So it's like that kind of thing, as simple as this may sound, like putting on these things enable you to see better. And Paige and I were at a conference in Los Angeles talking about like accessibility, all of these things that you have no clue about. You need to understand that everyone has challenges, and in those challenges, you don't understand unless you understand through engagement, through conversation, through understanding those things. But I still enjoy walking in New York City without my glasses, because then I don't see anyone. I see people. And in that moment, you understand that everyone's connected.
That's so nice. I usually need mushrooms for that experience. I didn't realize you could just like take your glasses off. You should try it. Okay, so the question is your favorite thing about yourself.
Yeah.
I don't want this to sound too morbid, because it's not. It's very real. One of my best girlfriends is a death doula. And she and I were on a walk the other day, and, you know, we were just sort of like chopping it up about what we want people to say about us when we inevitably ascend. And for me, I was like, I just want people to be like, she was a great fucking friend, you know? And that, and I think that my commitment to loving people is really the thing I love most about myself. Yeah. I'm a good friend. Yeah. Amanda, my
Here,
friend.
here. I'll affirm. I will affirm. I think, I guess I would say, and it probably speaks back to like what I was actually doing, you know, while making as a child, just like is being grounded. And I think that's like a quality that I just bring into my daily life. Sometimes it's challenged, but often I'm able to refine that. And I've developed a much deeper relationship with that, what that means over, especially the last couple of decades through, you know, life, and learning all various meditation practices. But that really like helps me to deal with my life and with the world. And I think that it's a quality that I share with people around me as well. And I think that it's appreciated by others. You know, it's a bit of like a calming or grounding presence for others. So that's one thing. And the other thing, you know, I think kind of playing off of Muse, I just think like, you know, in the face of many, you know, trials, you know, I think like that ultimately like having a core of like joy, it's another thing that I can easily tap into. And I feel like I bring much of the time, again, not all the time, but much of the time. So that's my combo.
Well, those are all of my questions. I don't know if you have questions of each other, or we've got the audience here. If y'all have any questions for us, for the panel, now's the time.
I will say just to Lene, thank you for this, but I want to know your spot. Where are you joyful? Like, where is your spot? Because like you've come up with all these questions, and they're unlike any questions at an artist talk. Most importantly, so it's humanity. It's like how we exist together and engage. So what's your spot?
My place that feels good, very much connects to the other water babies on the call for sure. But I would say similarly, I love just being next to a field, like a cornfield. I'm from rural Minnesota. Like it gives me the same vibe of like vastness and connection to the earth. So I really like being on the prairie, I guess, is my place for sure.
Other questions from the audience? Any questions? Any thoughts?
I'm not sure if this is a similar question within a place of joy, but is there a place where you as artists go to draw inspiration for the work that you create? Similar, it's in a similar vein, but sometimes places of joy and places for inspiration can be very different. Yeah. What does that look like?
So the question is there a space, if you didn't hear it, that as an artist, as a creator, as a collaborator, you go to find, to draw inspiration from? Is there a special place where it's that deeper thing?
I guess for me, I like to go back to my older work. So I can be like, if I'm having, I think it's more so like if I'm having doubts or like, I don't know, like, what am I doing? Like, go through that existential like crisis. And going back to my older work, I'm like, yeah, I really am like, I'm a bad bitch, like artistically, and I think that is like my main way of it, just like reminds you, because I think I hold like so many multitudes and I like have my hand in a lot of different things, but it's like easy to forget because I'm like in the present, but also still worried about the future. So like being grounded, like connecting all like those different points of time, like help me stay grounded. And then also thinking about like Jackie said about silence. That is also a space, which I feel like I realized like I have to do a lot of things to fill the silence, and then be like, oh man, why am I not inspired? Or be like, oh, I need to go, I gotta go in the wood, or like I gotta go in this residency to get like away from things so I can be silent, but then realizing those moments of meditation are in our daily life. So like whether that's like me washing doing my laundry, washing dishes, like those are moments of like silence that I can draw from and pull from into like my daily life. Because the inspiration is all around us, and it's just like tuning into it. So I'm trying to, I'm in the process of like being more mindful of how I feel those silences and like redirecting myself to like, actually, let's not do that, So yeah, multiple places, but yeah. What about you now?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah. Well, I don't make a lot of work, So so the dealio is yeah, it's like it's not about inspiration. I tell people this a lot. I think I mean it. I just try to live in the world and hope I can live in the world in a way where I'm connected enough so it can provide the possibility of something I must be compelled to do. It's not about inspiration. Sometimes conditions compel me to come forward, even like Fundred, the injustice and the lead poisoning. It just says, it's not about me choosing. I said, oh, hell, this is going to be hard. It's more about, I must do this. And I must do it in a way that I've never thought of before. So I don't look for a situation to make art. I think I'm constantly on the movement to find situations that find me. I'm falling constantly and it catches me because it won't let me go. And so I think you want to live in a world where you can always have an opportunity to be compelled, because there's so many things that would mediate our time and distract me. I'm just like every one of you, oh, I shouldn't say that. I know I can procrastinate. I could do all this stuff, not to make art. But then sometimes it just comes at you, say, no, you must do this. And I love that moment. I live for that moment.
Anybody else or any other questions? Yeah.
You said what drives my will to make me create? Okay, yeah. For me, it's definitely the will is there. I think it is a lot of like the society and like obstacles that like are barriers to me creating, and I think my job is to navigate that, or however I can get around those barriers, because I think it also for me it helps me to like kind of zoom out and like and like look at it from a wider perspective of it's bigger than me. It's bigger than me because I'm in this world and I'm having like for me, a lot of my stuff is like visions that I receive or like dreams that I have. It's like I want to be able to communicate like what's in my head with other people. And I'm like, there's a reason that I'm getting these like downloads or these visions. And if there's something that's in the way, like understand, basically being able to name it what it is, whether that is, like white supremacy or, racism, transphobia, like being able to name that stuff and also understand like and not let that hold me back, and like acknowledge that these things are here, and also I'm not gonna let it stop me. And then also like as I'm coming into this like awareness and acknowledgement of that, I'm also like working with my friends and my colleagues and stuff, and like also reassuring like we have to be in conversation with each other, because what like capitalism loves to like keep us in silos. So even thinking about what you were saying, Jackie, of like that collaboration of like going across like horizontal leadership, or being able to connect with each other, because we're not alone. Like we don't exist in this world in a vacuum. So for me, knowing that like my part, like what I can offer the world is like not only my relationship to each other, but also my art. So like that for me, it's less of like having the will to make art, but it's having the will to continue to make art, But yeah, it's just like the thing of like reminding yourself, like you have something important to say, and your view is your view and your perspective has value. So being able to see it in perspective, I think helps me for sure.
I was laughing because of your laugh that you love.
Yeah,
I heard that laugh. It made me laugh. Dang. Come on, Muse.
It's a good thing.
It's just it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Paige.
This is for anyone. Because we're in an academic setting, what role does your formal education play or not play in your development as an artist?
Okay, the question is, if you didn't hear, in an academic setting, what role did your education play or not play in your development as a creative?
Does somebody on Zoom want to take that first, or?
I mean, Mel taught me how to break the rules.
Yeah.
Easily.
Well, I only got a.
He's also one of the character witnesses when they were trying to kick me out of school. So it works in both ways. So you can push the limits to a point, but you can't over push the limits.
That's right. And you can be honest and you try, you learn. I remember, academic, I don't know too much about. Was that correct English? Because that is a telltale sign. But I only got a BA from this teacher's college, and I had to talk my way out of the last 9 hours or I wouldn't graduate, because I had failed home economics, psychology, and weightlifting. And the dean called me in and said, you got to go one more year, because I didn't want to go anywhere. I was really deep into ceramics. I had become a psychoceramic. I was covered. I was a janitor I was in there 24/7. So when he called me in to give me the bad news that I would not graduate, and he knew I was in the dean's list when I started, and he wanted to know what happened. So I went in covered with clay, and he's very fastidious. So he was looking all over all this mud dropping along in his office. And I had to be honest. So you gotta be honest and just say, I flunked psychology because I had this early childhood trauma, and you're trying to teach 101, and I've been on 501. So I already done that. And then the home economics, they flunked me because I gave a home tour of a boys' dormitory to show how young men design their homes and their places. And she didn't think that was too cool. But if you ask me about any curtain and valence or whatever you need, I can answer all that because I liked that class, so I was very upset. And the weightlifting coach, I was too impulsive. I walked out when he accused me of not having mental toughness. I thought that, what did that have to do with weightlifting? And that's the only thing I regret about walking out. I said, so I said, now it's time to ask you a question, Dean. Do you really want me here for another year? And he said, honestly, no, I will waive those 9 academic hours. Get the hell out of here, because I don't think I'm going to be able to change it. So I didn't talk my way. I just, my lesson about academics is shoot straight and ask those questions to the people in charge, So now don't use this while you're going to school with Joe, okay? Because that's not going to work. He already knows this story. It's not going to work. He will flunk you.
Yeah, I guess for me, I went to HBC, Historically Black University, and for me, that experience, I studied film production, and I minored in Africana studies, and that experience for me definitely helped me center and like my culture, my Blackness. I'm like surrounded not only whatever subject it was from a Black perspective. So that helped me. I mean, I always grew up like that. Like when I was in the 5th grade, I read Roots. I'm from Maryland. Like Annapolis is where they brought like Kunta Kinte in. So it's like that was always that history for me. Like I always knew about. Like I was always like reading narrative. So like that was always something that was in the front of my mind. But going to an HBCU and just being surrounded by my peers, but I still like kind of like was an outsider. I feel like I was someone, didn't fit in, was shy or introvert. So being I was in the School of Communication in the film department. So being there was, it was nice to be around my people, but before I got to college, I was definitely a theater nerd. I was like, I'm going to be an actor. I was going to Juilliard. My heart was set on going to Juilliard. But then I applied for Howard, and I didn't get in the acting program. So I was like, okay, well, what's like acting but not? So that's how I got into filmmaking. And then that process, I didn't think of film being able to take me into these types of spaces of like gallery spaces or art shows. That wasn't something that they really like talked about in my school. And it was like the School of C was like at the bottom of the hill, and then to get to the fine arts building, you had to go up a hill. So it was like that disconnect between those two buildings. But I was someone that was always in the theater department. I was, working on the shows. I was just trying to get as much information as I could, because I'm like, I want to be the best at my craft as I possibly can. So like something for me is like, I want to take advantage of all of the materials out there, and also part of me being able to like, I got a full ride to Howard, so I was able to have more flexibility and those types of things. So like I studied abroad twice. So the first time I went to Salvador, Brazil, and then the second time I went to Prague in the Czech Republic, and I was at a film school there. And that was a totally different experience for me because it was all white, I was the only Black person, and also somebody who was very, rooted in their culture, because there were so many times where people tried to gaslight me and try to make me feel like I didn't belong, when it's like, no, I actually belong here. So I had to be very sure when I came in which is not I guess the best place to be if you're trying to learn. So it's like, I'm glad I had those resources to pull from in terms of like my history of like studying under some of like the greatest like Black filmmakers or filmmakers in general, you know, coming from Howard. So like, but also being able to learn from like pull, like, you know, take everything with a grain of salt. It's like, just because these are considered the greatest things, it's like being able to be like, well, this is from this canon, and it's not necessarily all that there is, and you're not aware of all of these amazing like African filmmakers, you know. So it's like being able to bring my knowledge and my experience and not be shaken when I'm coming to a space that is completely different from what I was used to, what I grew up into, and still show up as my full self. And like, yeah, I'm like, my goal is just to be able to show up as unapologetically me as I possibly can. So like, I definitely credit my parents, my, you know, my HBCU for being able to like afford me that. But yeah, you know, I graduated, and then I was like, oh, I don't necessarily want to go to Hollywood, you know. So my sister is a curator, and she put me in my first show, and like I was showing films, and I was like, oh wow, this is a way to connect with people, you know. So then that's where I took this whole other journey of like, oh, you mean I can make weird art films and we're gonna watch them? So like, the learning never stopped, you know. It extended outside of that as well.
I mean, that's the perfect. I mean, all the responses are great, but I think that is an amazing place to end. And yeah, thank you all for being here. We're gonna call it a wrap on the fellowship kickoff. But before we applaud and do all the things, Muse is in Cincinnati through the end of next week. So I want to remind you of some events coming up that they're leading. Tomorrow we still have spaces available for the Remnants film screening and workshop, which Muse is facilitating in the lecture hall. Next Tuesday, right here, we'll be back for Muse's personal artist talk. Also in this room next Thursday is Muse Fire performance and video projection. So lots to come, and we are excited for Jackie to be in the building this summer. More to come there, and I just can't thank our panelists enough for their generosity and collaboration and willingness to, you know, do this through COVID and be hybrid. So thank you all very much, and thank you, audience, for being here. Thank you.
And hopefully, when we gather together again in the summer, Jackie, when you're here, hopefully Muse will come back, open invitation. Paul and Amanda and the rest of the crew will be here. Possibly we can gather in person. We will see. We take one day at a time here, 1 minute at a time sometimes. And in the best interest of our students and our community, we will be as vigilant as possible, even though the CDC is changing their minds minute by minute, even an hour. So we will maintain our commitment to the health and safety of our community. And I would just send a shout out to Lene in joining our crew here as director of the Office of Engagement, putting all of this together. Amazing work.
Definitely. Wow.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you all. Sign off. Happy Friday. Be safe.
Oh, nice.
Be well. We'll
Thank
talk
you.
soon.
See you.
Yeah, stay warm, y'all. Stay bundled.
Yay.
Yeah.